XRP is sitting around the $1 level, and that's exactly why this question matters. If the market is still under pressure, why would institutional players be increasing their XRP exposure? The easy answer is to say the big money knows something retail investors don't. But that's not something we can prove. What we can do is look at the signals and ask whether the current price is telling the whole story. One of the biggest points discussed in the source material is Franklin Templeton. Its reported XRP position was described as rising to about *225.37 million XRP, up roughly *65.71 million XRP from the previous quarter. That doesn't automatically mean XRP is about to explode higher, but it does create an important contradiction. While many retail holders are frustrated by XRP's price, institutional exposure appears to be growing, and that leads to the question a lot of XRP investors are asking right now: why isn't the price responding? If large players are accumulating exposure, why does XRP keep struggling around $1? Why are sellers still able to push the market lower? And is the market simply taking longer to absorb this demand than investors expected? The selling pressure is real. The transcript points to a sharp move in XRP's taker-buyer-seller ratio, with aggressive market selling outweighing buying activity. That kind of move can be associated with short-term capitulation, meaning some holders may simply be giving up after waiting for the breakout that never came. And the comments reflect exactly that frustration. Some investors are tired of hearing about future catalysts while XRP remains near $1. Others are questioning whether the price is being manipulated. Some are even asking whether they should keep holding or walk away. But here's where things get interesting. At the same time, investors are losing patience. The broader institutional and regulatory picture is moving in a very different direction. The source material highlights an upcoming White House meeting involving major crypto executives, including Ripple, alongside regulators and other industry participants. The interpretation presented is that this could be part of a larger push toward clearer crypto rules. So we have two completely different stories happening at once. The price is saying nothing is happening, but the institutional activity is asking a completely different question. What if something is happening underneath the surface that the price hasn't reflected yet? That doesn't guarantee a rally. It doesn't prove a supply shock is coming, and it certainly doesn't mean XRP is guaranteed to hit any specific price. But it does make the $1 level much more interesting. Because if institutions are increasing exposure while retail investors are becoming increasingly impatient, the real question may not be, why isn't XRP moving? It may be, what are the buyers seeing that the current XRP price is not showing us yet? But there's another side to this story that makes the $1 price even more interesting, because institutional interest isn't only about someone buying XRP and putting it in a wallet. The bigger development is what happens when XRP starts becoming usable as financial infrastructure. The source material points to XRP moving deeper into lending, collateral, ETFs, liquidity strategies, and other financial products. For example, XRP is now being used as collateral on Derived, allowing users to trade XRP-related options and perpetuals while using XRP exposure as part of the system. The reported early figures included roughly $5 million borrowed against XRP, with high utilization and no reported liquidations at that point. That matters because it changes the question. Instead of simply asking, who is buying XRP, we should also ask, what are people going to do with XRP once they own it? And this is where the supply discussion becomes much more complicated. The source material argues that XRP could increasingly be locked into ETFs, hedge fund strategies, lending markets, and liquidity pools. It cites a tracker showing roughly *992 million XRP associated with ETFs, approaching 1% of total supply. The same discussion projects that if multiple XRP-based products continue expanding, the amount effectively tied up in these strategies could eventually become much larger. The transcript specifically talks about a potential path toward more than 10 billion XRP being associated with ETFs, yield strategies, lending, and other platforms. Now we have to be careful here. Those future projections are not guarantees. They are expectations presented in the source material, and locked up supply does not automatically mean XRP's price has to rise. But it does give us a completely different way of looking at the current market. Retail investors see XRP around $1 and think, nothing is happening. Meanwhile, financial products are being built around the asset. That's the contradiction. And perhaps the most frustrating part for XRP holders is that these developments can take place without immediately producing the massive price move they expected. That's why so many investors are questioning whether they've been waiting for something that simply isn't ready yet. The real test isn't whether XRP can briefly move above $1. The real test is whether institutional adoption, financial products, and actual XRP utility can eventually create sustained demand strong enough to change the market structure. And if that happens, the $1 price we're staring at today could look very different in hindsight. But before we get carried away, there's one major question we still need to answer. If institutions are accumulating and new XRP financial products are expanding, why is XRP still struggling at $1? Asterisk. And that brings us to the biggest question. What would actually make XRP move? Because institutional interest alone isn't enough. XRP needs real demand, real usage, and enough activity to create sustained buying pressure. That's why the developments around ETFs, lending, collateral, and XRP-based financial products are worth watching. The source material points toward a future where XRP isn't simply held as an investment, but increasingly used as collateral and liquidity across different financial applications. But there's an important reality here. None of this guarantees a price explosion. XRP can remain around $1 while these systems are being built. Markets don't always price future adoption immediately, and expectations can remain ahead of actual demand for a long time. That's exactly why today's price is so frustrating for many holders. They see institutions, ETFs, lending products, and new infrastructure developing, yet XRP still looks stuck. So instead of asking whether XRP will suddenly explode tomorrow, the better question is the foundation being built for a much larger market later? If more XRP becomes tied up in financial products while new sources of demand emerge, the market could eventually become very different from what we see today. But until that demand actually appears, nobody can honestly guarantee a specific XRP price target. So keep your eyes on the fundamentals, not just the hype, because the most important story may not be XRP at $1 today. It may be what happens when the infrastructure being built around XRP finally starts generating meaningful demand. And that is the part of this story I'll be watching next.